Victory in Westeros rarely feels like the end of a story. Battles conclude, judgments are delivered, and the crowd eventually disperses. But the moral questions created by those events rarely disappear so easily. The fifth episode, In the Name of the Mother, shifts the focus away from the clash of steel and towards something far more difficult to measure: the aftermath. Because once the spectacle of violence fades and the dust settles, the realm must confront a deeper question. What does justice actually mean in a world where survival often decides who is considered right? The title of the episode immediately signals the direction this chapter of the story intends to explore. Within the faith of the Seven, each aspect of the divine represents a different virtue, shaping the moral structure of Westerosi society. The mother embodies compassion, mercy, and forgiveness. Invoking her name during a moment of judgment suggests the possibility that justice should not be defined solely by punishment or victory. It suggests that mercy might also play a role in determining what is right. After the brutality surrounding the recent conflict, that idea begins to carry enormous weight. For many within the realm, the outcome of the trial might appear straightforward. A ritual was invoked. Champions fought. The result was decided according to ancient law. From a purely legal perspective, the matter could be considered resolved. Yet the episode makes it clear that emotional and political consequences rarely vanish, simply because a tradition has delivered its verdict. The wounds left behind by pride, humiliation, and loss continue influencing the behaviour of those involved. Justice may have been declared, but peace is far more complicated. This tension between mercy and justice forms the moral centre of the episode. In theory, the traditions of Westeros allow for fairness through structured rituals like trial by combat. In practice, those rituals often create outcomes that satisfy legal requirements without addressing deeper emotional damage. The faith of the Seven therefore becomes an important lens through which characters interpret what has happened. By invoking the Mother, the story introduces the idea that forgiveness may be necessary if the realm is to move forward without endless cycles of retaliation. Religion in Westeros frequently appears ceremonial during moments of celebration or formal judgment. Prayers are spoken, blessings are given, and the symbols of the Seven are displayed as reminders of shared belief. Yet this episode demonstrates that the ideals associated with those symbols can carry real influence when people choose to embrace them sincerely. The Mother's presence within the narrative encourages characters to consider compassion as a legitimate response to conflict. It asks whether mercy can exist within a society that so often prioritizes pride and retribution. This religious framework also highlights how deeply cultural traditions shape the way justice is understood in the realm. The Seven are not merely distant figures worshipped in temples. Their aspects represent guiding principles that influence how individuals evaluate right and wrong. When someone invokes the Mother, they are appealing to a value system that encourages forgiveness over vengeance. That appeal introduces a new dimension to the aftermath of the conflict, one that challenges the instinctive desire for punishment that often follows humiliation or loss. At the same time, the episode reminds viewers that pride among noble families rarely fades quickly. The events surrounding the trial have left emotional scars among powerful individuals whose reputations are closely tied to honour and public perception. In Westeros, pride is not simply a personal emotion. It is deeply connected to family identity and political standing. When that pride is wounded, the consequences often extend beyond the individuals directly involved. Entire houses may feel compelled to respond in order to defend their reputation within the wider network of noble alliances. This ripple effect becomes one of the most fascinating aspects of the episode's exploration of political consequences. What began as a confrontation between a few individuals has now attracted the attention of powerful figures across the realm. Conversations about what happened travel quickly through noble circles, and each retelling carries its own interpretation of events. Some may view the outcome as a triumph of honour. Others may see it as an embarrassment that demands correction. The truth becomes shaped not only by facts, but by the perspective of those discussing it. These reactions reveal how fragile the stability of the realm can be when pride and reputation collide. Even during periods of relative peace, conflicts between nobles have the potential to grow far beyond their original scope. The ruling families of Westeros constantly balance personal grievances against the broader need to maintain order. Allowing pride to dictate every decision risks escalating disputes into larger confrontations that threaten the delicate balance of power within the kingdom. The episode also offers a subtle reminder that power does not always translate into complete freedom of action. Princes and lords may hold authority over lands and people, but they remain bound by expectations surrounding family honour, tradition, and public perception. Acting impulsively can damage a house's reputation just as easily as appearing weak. This creates a complicated environment where even the most powerful figures must consider how their decisions will be interpreted by others watching from afar. Within this environment, restraint sometimes becomes a form of strength. Choosing mercy rather than vengeance may appear surprising, but it can also demonstrate confidence and wisdom. Leaders who understand the long-term consequences of conflict often recognize that endless retaliation benefits no one. By acknowledging the possibility of forgiveness, they signal that maintaining stability within the realm matters more than satisfying wounded pride. The invocation of the mother therefore becomes not only a spiritual appeal, but also a political statement. All of these dynamics reinforce one of the series' most powerful themes. Small actions can reshape the course of events in ways no one initially anticipates. When Dunk first acted to defend someone weaker than himself, the moment felt personal and immediate. It was a reaction guided by empathy rather than strategy, yet that decision has now set off a chain of events reaching into the highest levels of the realm's political structure. Princes have been challenged, knights have chosen sides. The reputation of powerful houses has been affected. The episode therefore invites the audience to reflect on how history often unfolds. Major political shifts are rarely triggered by carefully planned revolutions alone. Sometimes they begin with simple acts of courage, performed by individuals who are not thinking about the larger consequences of their choices. Dunk did not intend to alter the conversations of nobles or influence the perception of powerful families. He simply refused to ignore injustice when it appeared in front of him. That decision now echoes far beyond the moment in which it was made. This realization adds emotional depth to the aftermath of the conflict. The realm must now decide how to interpret what has happened. Was the confrontation an unfortunate dispute that should be forgotten as quickly as possible? Or was it a reminder that even the most powerful figures are not entirely beyond challenge? The answers to those questions will shape how future events unfold, influencing how both common people and nobles understand the meaning of honour within their society. When the noise of conflict finally fades, the most powerful stories often turn inward. The fifth episode, In the Name of the Mother, slows the pace of the narrative and begins examining the emotional weight left behind after violence. Instead of focusing on swords or spectacle, the episode asks a quieter but far more important question. What remains after honour has been tested, and lives have been lost. Because while the clash of warriors may end a conflict in the eyes of the law, it does not erase the grief, memory, and responsibility carried by those who survive. For Sir Duncan the Tall, the aftermath of the trial is not defined by victory alone. It is defined by reflection. The battle may have proven that he was willing to stand by his principles, but the cost of that moment now sits heavily on his conscience. People died during the confrontation, and among them were individuals whose presence shaped Dunk's life in profound ways. In the quiet that follows the violence, Dunk is forced to revisit the path that brought him to this moment, remembering the people who helped turn a nameless orphan into a knight walking the roads of Westeros. One of the most important figures in those memories is Ser Arlan. Long before Dunk ever stood before princes or faced a trial that would shake noble houses, he was simply a boy with no clear future. Meeting Ser Arlan changed everything. The old hedge knight took him in when few others would have bothered. Instead of treating Dunk as a burden, he offered him guidance, patience, and something even more valuable, a chance to belong somewhere. Ser Arlan was not a great lord or a famous champion. He was simply a wandering knight who believed that honour still meant something even without wealth or recognition. Yet for Dunk, that example carried enormous importance. The lessons he learned while travelling beside Ser Arlan shaped the way he understands knighthood. The old knight taught him that strength alone does not define a warrior. A true knight must also possess compassion, humility, and the willingness to protect those who cannot protect themselves. These memories reveal how deeply Ser Arlan's influence continues guiding Dunk's decisions. Every time Dunk chooses empathy over convenience, he echoes the values his mentor lived by. Even after Sir Arlan's death, those lessons remain alive within him. The armour Dunk wears and the title he carries were inherited from that relationship. But the most important inheritance was the understanding of what a knight should strive to be. Yet Sir Arlan was not the only figure shaping Dunk's early life. Before the long roads and knightly duties ever entered his world, Dunk had known friendship in its simplest form. A childhood friend who shared the hardships of growing up among the small folk. That friendship represented a different kind of bond, one formed not through mentorship, but through shared struggle and youthful hope. Losing that friend left a wound that Dunk rarely speaks about openly, but it remains part of the foundation of who he is. The death of his childhood companion reminds Dunk how fragile life can be for those born without power or protection. In the streets and villages of Westeros, survival is never guaranteed. People disappear quietly, taken by hardship, illness, or violence that the powerful rarely notice. That early loss shaped Dunk's sense of responsibility toward others. When someone vulnerable stands in danger, he does not see a stranger. He sees the memory of people he once cared about and could not protect. These reflections make the episode deeply personal. The story pauses long enough for the audience to understand that Dunk's choices are not driven by abstract ideals alone. They are rooted in lived experience. The kindness that Arlan showed him, the friendship he once shared with someone who never had the chance to grow older, and the countless struggles of ordinary people along the road all combine to shape the man he has become. But perhaps the most devastating loss, revealed in the aftermath of the trial, is the death of Prince Baelor. Among the many powerful figures surrounding the conflict, Baelor stood apart in a significant way. Unlike others who allowed pride or cruelty to guide their actions, Baelor carried himself with a sense of responsibility and fairness that reflected a different vision of leadership. His presence during the events leading to the trial suggested that not all members of the ruling class were blind to justice. Baelor's death therefore carries enormous emotional weight. It is not simply the loss of another noble figure within the realm. It represents the loss of someone who might have embodied the better qualities of leadership. His willingness to intervene and address the conflict demonstrated courage that many others in positions of power might have avoided. In a world where rank often shields individuals from accountability, Baelor showed that authority could also be used to uphold fairness. For Dunk, the realization that Baelor died partly because of the chain of events surrounding the conflict creates a complicated mixture of gratitude and guilt. Baelor stepped forward during a moment when the situation could easily have escalated even further. His presence brought a measure of stability and fairness to the proceedings, yet the violence that followed still claimed his life. That reality forces Dunk to confront the unintended consequences of the stand he chose to take. This emotional burden reinforces one of the episode's central themes. Justice and mercy often exist in tension with one another. The trial resolved the immediate dispute, according to the laws and traditions of Westeros. But the cost of that resolution included lives that cannot be replaced. In the quiet moments following the conflict, characters must consider whether vengeance or forgiveness offers a better path forward. The invocation of the mother becomes especially meaningful in this context, symbolizing compassion during a time when grief could easily lead to further anger. Baelor's death also echoes through the political structure of the realm. As a member of the ruling family, his loss affects not only those who knew him personally, but also the broader stability of the royal house. Different individuals interpret the meaning of his death in different ways. Some may see it as the tragic cost of defending honour. Others may view it as evidence that pride and rivalry among the nobility can spiral into consequences far beyond what anyone intended. These reactions highlight how interconnected the personal and political realms of Westeros truly are. The death of a prince is never simply a private tragedy. It becomes part of the ongoing narrative shaping how the realm understands power, leadership, and responsibility. For Dunk, the knowledge that his actions contributed to events affecting figures as significant as Baelor deepens the sense that his journey now carries consequences reaching far beyond his own life. Despite the grief and uncertainty surrounding these losses, the episode ultimately returns to the relationship at the heart of the story, Dunk and Egg. Their partnership has endured conflict, danger, and revelations about the world around them. In many ways, the tragedies of the recent events strengthen their bond rather than weakening it. Shared hardship often creates connections that feel unbreakable, and the experiences they have endured together now shape how they will face the future. As the episode moves toward its conclusion, the tone remains reflective rather than triumphant. The story does not celebrate the outcome of the trial as a simple victory. Instead, it presents the aftermath as a moment of understanding. Dunk's journey has always been about discovering what knighthood truly means. Through loss, mentorship, and the sacrifices of others, that understanding continues growing clearer.